Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Joshua Barnes. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Donald Trump has acknowledged that there is a possibility that Russian President Vladimir Putin doesn't want to deal with Ukraine. Meanwhile, Trump rules out US troops being deployed to Ukraine, but eyes aerial support for security as the US and European military planners have begun exploring post-conflict security guarantees for the European nation. This comes as a reported Ukrainian drone attack has knocked out a power in parts of Russian-held Zaporizhia. This comes as Ukraine says Russian strikes on an energy facility in Odessa region have sparked fires. The White House has said that US President Donald Trump imposed steep additional tariffs on Indian goods to end the war in Ukraine. The move doubled India's tariffs to 50%, with the new rates taking effect on August the 27th. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the US is discussing a ceasefire proposal for a 60-day truce in Gaza, which Hamas has accepted. Israel says they want all hostages to be released at once as protests continue in Israel over ending the war and reaching a hostage deal. India and China have agreed to resume direct flights and boost trade and investment as they rebuild ties damaged by the 2020 border clashes. The deal includes reopening border trade points and easing visa rules, India's foreign ministry has said. The State Department has revoked over 6,000 international student visas, citing violations such as assault, driving under the influence, burglary, overstays, and what it termed as support for terrorism. Officials did not clarify the latter, but noted that some students protesting in support of Palestine had been targeted. North Korea's Kim Yo-jong accused South Korean President Lee Jae-myung of a dual personality for seeking peace while holding joint drills with the US. The exercises test an upgraded response to North Korean nuclear tests. And Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani has met an Israeli delegation in Paris to discuss regional stability. The US-mediated talks focused on de-escalation in southern Syria and non-interference in Syria's domestic affairs. But we start this hour with some breaking news and a death toll from a collision between a bus carrying Afghan migrants returning from Iran and two other vehicles in western Afghanistan has risen to 76, according to a provincial official. The government spokesperson, Mohammed Yusuf Saidi, said 76 citizens lost their lives in the incident and 3 others have been seriously injured. Well, joining us to discuss this breaking development is Gautam Mukherjee, a senior reporter who joins us live from New Delhi. Gautam, thank you firstly for joining us, of course, concerning news. There is a diplomatic element to this. Of course, we know Afghans have been told to leave Iran after, of course, diplomacy being at play. A bus here of refugees returning, leading to the deaths of over 70 people. What's your initial thoughts on this update?
Well, it's quite a tragedy. So many people being killed. I don't know how many were on the bus. If 76, most large buses have 53 number of seats. This is more than that. Of course, there were other people involved in the collision, including bikes, other vehicles. So, yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, is there a wider question, Gautam, that needs to be asked about the safety of roads and vehicles travelling in Afghanistan?
I don't know about that. You know, this is an accident and it can happen anywhere. It is quite a severe accident from the looks of it. It looks like maybe the bus left the road and fell down some distance, because for practically everybody on it,
Yes, Gautam, if you do stay with us, we're going to move away from that breaking news, but of course bring you any further updates that we get from that tragic incident. We're going to move now to tariffs, and in a significant escalation of tensions, US President Donald Trump has of course imposed sanctions on India. This includes a 50% tariff on Indian exports. Now, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has stated that the move is part of broader efforts to bring an end to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The tariffs come after US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent accused India of profiteering from the resale of Russian oil, with its purchases increasing sharply since the war began. China's Russian oil imports grew by only 3%. This is because China has diversified its oil sources, limiting its reliance on Russian oil. Bessent also highlighted India's $16 billion in excess profits from this trade, calling it unacceptable. India has labelled the tariffs as unjustified, adding to the ongoing strain in US-India relations. Well, Gautam, thank you for joining us on this topic. Of course, there is a significant action that has been taken by the US, and now a justification from the White House saying that India has been singled out so far, the only country to face any further tariffs for purchasing Russian oil, because it will help end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Has India been made a scapegoat here?
I don't think they can make us scapegoats. They can put their tariffs, but it is an unjustified and bizarre reasoning. We are going to buy Russian oil if it suits us, and there is absolutely nothing that America can do about it. To attach it to the idea that Indian oil purchases are prolonging the Russian-Ukrainian war is pure fantasy. And what can you do with an administration that deals in fantasy?
Yes, Gautam, of course, China, another country that has been purchasing Russian oil, singled out by Donald Trump after he imposed this extra 25% tariff on India. He also said that other countries purchasing Russian oil would potentially face sanctions. Why has Trump not followed through with that promise?
Well, when it comes to China, America is dependent on China for many vital imports and is in no position to sanction China because China immediately retaliates, and that is very damaging to US industry and strategic interests, including things like critical minerals, chips, and the like. So it is hard-pressed to sanction China because China retaliates immediately. In India's case, he thinks he can get away with it. He's doing it. He's not getting away with it. We are diversifying our exports. We are diversifying our export payments so that we are less reliant on the dollar. We're strengthening BRICS. We're strengthening our relationship with both Russia and China. So I don't know what this is achieving.
Gautam, we have a very short amount of time left, but very quickly, these higher rates come into effect August the 27th. There was planned bilateral talks between the US and India for just before then. Those have been postponed. Is there any hope of these 50% tariffs on exports from India stopping and not being implemented? Or in your opinion, is this going to happen?
Well, we don't care. India has already moved on. America can put 100% tariffs on top of this if it so pleases. It is not in our strategic calculations. We think the entire thing is entirely unfair, and so America can do as it pleases.
Gautam Mukherjee, thank you as always for joining us and providing insights on both of those topics. Of course, all eyes on that 27th of August date and any comments or reactions that will come ahead of that. Let's now move, though, to the Middle East. And Australia have lashed out at Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after he branded Anthony Albanese a weak politician who betrayed Israel. The war of words erupted days after Canberra announced it would recognise a Palestinian state. Australian Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke said strength was not about how many people you can blow up or how many children you can leave hungry, accusing Netanyahu of isolating Israel with his actions. Here is his full statement.
On the issue of that you go to, particularly there about strength versus weakness. Strength is not measured by how many people you can blow up or how many children you can leave hungry. Strength is much better measured by exactly what Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has done, which is when there's a decision that we know Israel won't like, he goes straight to Benjamin Netanyahu. He has the conversation. He says exactly what we're intending to do. But to say to the Palestinian people, who at the moment must be feeling so invisible to the world, to say you are not invisible, we see you, we will recognise you, and that we will take the action that Australia has always believed needed to be taken, which is that we have two states, an Israeli state and a Palestinian state, both secure, both recognised, both safe.
Well, relationships between the two nations have plunged in just over a week, with Australia cancelling visas for far-right Israeli lawmakers, Israel retaliating by pulling visas from Australian diplomats, and Netanyahu then escalating the row online. Let's listen in to what Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has said.
I don't take these things personally. I engage with people. Diplomatically, he's had similar things to say about other leaders. What I say is that Israel, of course, increasingly there is global concern. And global concern because people want to see an end to the cycle of... We'll continue to put forward Australia's position. And, Australians want those two things. They want the cycle of violence to stop, and they don't want conflict brought here. And that is very clear, and that's been the response from leaders of the community.
Well, France too has entered a diplomatic standoff with Israel. In a letter, Benjamin Netanyahu accused French President Emmanuel Macron of fueling anti-Semitism by pledging Palestinian statehood recognition at the UN. The French presidency called his remarks abject and erroneous, insisting France has always protected its Jewish citizens. With allies from New Zealand to Canada criticising Israel's stance, Netanyahu is potentially isolated as the Gaza war drags on and famine warnings continue to mount. Well, joining us to discuss this standoff between Israel and Australia and other ramifications is Gedaliah Blum, who is a Middle East affairs expert, joining us from Eli in Israel. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Let's look at the tit for tat that we've been having now with Australia and Israel. Of course, some extremely strong comments. I'm just going to read out again that quote that we have had from Australia, saying that how many people you can blow up or how many children you can leave hungry. That's saying, of course, that strength was not about this matter. How provocative is that statement from an Australian diplomat and politician?
I mean, it sounds like they're parroting exactly the propaganda coming out of Gaza, out of Hamas. Hamas is very happy, they're very proud, and they're congratulating world leaders around the world that are supporting their cause. And I think that if you are being congratulated by Hamas, an internationally recognized terrorist organization that kidnaps babies and pulverizes them with rocks and boulders in order to make it look like they were killed by an Israeli strike, then I think that you should probably revisit your stance on certain affairs.
Yes, of course there have been questions raised about the situation in Gaza by many world leaders, and the conversation around a two-state solution and recognition of a Palestinian state isn't just coming from Australia, France, another nation, questions being raised by New Zealand and other European leaders as well. Is that so out of the blue, do you think, or is this expected given the length of this war and reports coming from organisations like the UN about the situation in Gaza?
I mean, number one, I think people are just tired. They're tired of this ongoing soap opera, and they're not understanding that there is no political solution to this problem. The Palestinian national identity was actually created in cahoots with the then Soviet Russia in order to push back on the West. They saw the Middle East had an ally with the United States, and they created this nation state in order to erase the Jewish people's history to the land and call the Jewish people from Judea occupiers. And the world just ate it up. So now they're seeing this as a problem that's a political problem, which is not. The whole identity of Palestinian identity, nationalism, is a response to the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, which is why you will not see any Jews today, especially after October 7th, or Palestinians supporting a two-state solution. It's just not something that is on the ground that is being recognized. So what we're seeing is international community is actually part of this colonialization of the Middle East that they're trying to fight against, but they're trying to push their they're trying to push their will on the situation here in which they don't know about. And I will say this, when it comes to Australia, they have their own interests. And as far as recognizing a Palestinian state, whether it's the going back and forth with Bibi Netanyahu, for us, Australia does not have any leverage as far as our domestic policy. They're far away. We don't have good ties. They don't have any leverage. Whatever they say is not going to change anything on the ground. So why are they saying it? I would actually venture to say that they're actually saying it for domestic purposes only. And as I believe it was the Home Affairs Minister, Tony Burkett, said, they're not looking to escalate any kind of hate or violence, additional with in general. But I'll say that the violence and hate that they're trying to keep quiet is actually domestic. There is an insurgency happening in the West right now, where Islamists are coming in as a Trojan horse, wrapped up in these keywords like let's say justice and freedom, in which they're actually looking to destroy the freedom and justice that is found in the Middle East, the only one democracy in the Middle East. They're looking to destroy and erase the borders of freedom and democracy, and to expand the borders of fascism and Islamism in the Middle East. And they're also seeing it domestically in their states. So I would actually venture to say that Benjamin Netanyahu, I don't think, was correct in his response to the Australian Prime Minister by calling him weak. I would actually say that the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, should have actually put out a hand to the Prime Minister and saying, listen, I understand your domestic issues that are happening right now. I understand that Western civilization is now is under threat. And we are here fighting this as the front line, and we will do everything that we can in order to make sure that you are strong, that you could maintain civilization as you've known it for the last 100+ years in Australia.
Yes, absolutely. If you do stay with us, please, Gedaliah, we're going to move on to a related development now. And this comes as the United Nations has sharply criticised Israel for blocking tents from entering Gaza for the past 5 months, despite repeated displacement orders. The UN Humanitarian Office says more than 700,000 people have been displaced or redisplaced in this period, often left without shelter. Israel argues tents are dual use, as poles could serve military purposes. The UN Human Rights Office warned Israel's planned takeover of Gaza City risks mass displacement, killings and worsening misery. Civilians are being pushed towards Al-Mawasi, an area still under bombardment and lacking food, water, electricity and shelter. Officials say the risk of starvation is now everywhere, blaming Israel restrictions on aid. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a private group backed by Israel and the US, has delivered over 2 million food boxes since May, but reaching aid remains dangerous, according to local sources. Nearly 1,900 Palestinians have been reportedly killed while seeking supplies in recent weeks, most reportedly by Israeli fire. Well, Gedaliah, thank you for staying with us. What's your response to this UN statement about tents in the wake of reports of these killings around aid facilities and also displacements being reported and, of course, ordered by the Israeli military?
Number one, I think it's a smokescreen that is covering the UN's number one responsibility, especially UNRWA, the one category of Palestinian agencies, the refugee agency, specifically only for Palestinians. They're the only people in the world that have their own agency in the UN for refugees, UNRWA, and yet UNRWA is not doing what they're mandated to, which is to protect refugees. In fact, they're not even calling for refugees out of Gaza. And the fact of the matter is that why are we talking about the difficulties bringing aid into Gaza, into a war zone, when we should be bringing civilians out of the war zone into safety, where aid could be easily plentiful, where medicine and care could be also provided, and civilians are not in a war zone, which would allow Israel to fight a faster and cleaner war. So everything else is a complete smokescreen to that one key point. They are not living up to their mandate, and no one's talking about it. No officials, no agencies. The only people who are talking about allowing war refugees is Israel. And the response from the international community is that we are seeking ethnic cleansing. So just to put things in perspective, there's only one other place in the world that does not allow for war refugees, and that's North Korea. So let's put that in perspective. And if you want to talk about international aid not arriving into Gaza, later this evening, I will be at the Kerem Shalom crossing on the Gaza side. And I will be live streaming from my X page, Mossad IL, if anybody wants to tune in. And they will see thousands and thousands of tons of aid that is sitting out in the boiling sun in Gaza in the summer heat, rotting, because the UN is not in control of the logistics of the humanitarian aid. So because they're not in control anymore.
Okay, Gedaliah, I'm sorry to interject. Thank you ever so much for that insight. We are unfortunately out of time, but such a unique insight, of course, into the situation. You will be staying with us on our next story, which is away from Gaza, but still relating to the Middle East. The Syrian and Israeli diplomats have held rare direct talks in Paris. Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabaini met with an Israeli delegation on Tuesday to discuss de-escalation and non-interference in Syria's internal affairs. That's according to Syria's state news agency. The US mediated the meeting, reportedly produced understanding aimed at supporting stability in the region. This meeting follows earlier rounds of dialogue, including a July meeting in Baku between Assad al-Shabaini and Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer. Talks also focused on reviving the 1974 disengagement accord, which created a buffer zone between the two countries. Israel and Syria have technically remained at war since 1948. This renewed push for diplomacy comes after last month's deadly sectarian clashes in Sueda province that killed more than 1,400 people, and amid ongoing Israeli strikes on Syrian targets. That includes the presidential palace in Damascus a few weeks ago. Well, Gedaliah Blum, thank you again for staying with us. We don't have too much longer on this topic, but of course, diplomacy amid uncertainty and recent tensions between the new Syrian regime and Israel. What's your thoughts on this meeting, and how could this progress towards two countries working at least side by side, if not in direct unity?
Well, the way the Middle East works is that whoever's stronger is the one who gets to set the terms. And luckily for Israel, we're much stronger after demilitarizing Syria under Assad. Now we have al-Jolani, the quote-unquote former al-Qaeda ISIS member, who has militias that wear ISIS insignias that go into the Sueda region, the Druze region of Syria, which borders Israel, and has been slaughtering, kidnapping, and intimidating the Druze until a retaliatory attack came from Israel. That is the way that the game board is set. Now, when it comes to diplomacy, our interests are not the interests of all of Syrians. They get to choose their own future. But our interest is to protect ethnic minorities, especially our Druze brothers and sisters here in Israel. We have a large Druze population, the Golan in northern Israel, who have cousins and relatives on the Syrian side. These are Druze who fight for Israel. They put on the IDF uniform and they are patriots. And it is our mission for our own family, our own brothers and sisters, to make sure that their cousins, their uncles, their mothers, and their sisters are protected, even under a jihadi regime. Now, our diplomacy is pretty much showing Al-Jilani what our red lines are and showing that we're not going to back down. Okay. And we hope that these discussions will turn into a structured government that's more of a federal government that is going to give autonomy and protection for the Druze community. And we'll see what happens there. But yes, no one knows.
Gedaliah Blum, thank you ever so much for providing such great insights on those topics. There are, of course, a lot for us to monitor, and we will do so and bring you all of the updates from across the Middle East. Let's move to North America now, and the US State Department has revoked over 6,000 international student visas for violations of US law and overstays. The majority of the violations involved serious offences. While specifics weren't given, the administration has targeted some who protested in support for Palestine. This action is part of the Trump administration's ongoing crackdown on immigration and international students, which includes enhanced social media vetting for visa applications. Many students, however, have expressed regret over their decision to apply to US universities. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has indicated that thousands of visas have been revoked since January, drawing criticism from Democrats who argue this undermines due protests. Well, joining us on this is Dr. Satoru Nagao, who is a fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining us live from Tokyo, Japan. Thank you, Dr. Nagao, for being here. This, of course, is a contentious topic. The Trump administration has been looking at protests, pro-Palestinian protests, of course, on college campuses. But this news around revoking 6,000 visas, what is your response?
I think this issue has two aspects. One is a diplomatic aspect, another one is domestic aspect. Diplomatic aspect, of course, you have already introduced. This is an issue related with Israel and Palestine. And at the same time, the Trump administration believes a Chinese student or research project with China is stealing the technology from the United States. So that's why the Trump administration wants to limit the visa or research collaboration with China and our other anti-Israel movement. But at the same time, there is another aspect, which is a domestic political aspect, which is Republicans versus Democrats. Democrat supporter is concentrated in the university, the Trump administration believe, and it is through many students and indeed teacher also support Democrat. So that's why the view from the Republican. This is the fortress of the opposition party. So that's why the cracking down itself is domestic politics. So these two aspects has occurred at the same time. That's why this issue is a little bit complicated. The matter is, worry is influence to U.S. influence towards the world, because U.S. need to defeat China in the competition with China in the international stage. In this case, the influence towards the other country is strong point of the United States. So how to maintain it or how to exploit the situation to victory in the competition? That is another matter the U.S. government need to deal with. So United States government try to do, I believe, but at the same time, the process is step by step, they will do that. Currently, they try to eliminate opposition support or pro-China or anti-Israel. These people, they are cracking down. This is under one of the process. Yes. To make the universities their side, I believe. That is my current situation. in my analysis.
Dr. Nagal, thank you for that insight. Please do stay with us. We're going to move to a separate development as North Korea has launched fresh criticism at South Korea's leadership. Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of Kim Jong-un, accused President Lee Jae-myung of South Korea and his government of showing a dual personality, calling for peace, while at the same time conducting joint military drills with the United States. Seoul this week began removing loudspeakers along the border and announced the step-by-step implementation of past inter-Korean agreements. The presidential office insisted that these are preemptive measures for stability and prosperity on both sides of the peninsula, not moves for political gain. But Kim Yo-jong dismissed those efforts, saying that South Korea cannot be a diplomatic partner and warning that its ambition to confront the North remains unchanged. Her comments follow Kim Jong-un's claim earlier this week that the joint drills were proof of Washington and Seoul's intent to provoke war, which is also a reason why he believes that Pyongyang needs to rapidly expand its nuclear arsenal. The two Koreas remain technically still at war, and despite President Lee's attempts at engagement, North Korea has so far refused to respond to his calls for dialogue. Dr. Nagal, thank you for staying with us. We don't have long, but is this a precursor to potential escalation, or is this just a war of words?
Yes, when North Korea want to show the strong message, every time North Korea choose Kim Yo-jong to say something, that is her role. So that's why the North Korea tried to show the strong stance towards South Korea. So view from the other country, every time South Korea choose pro-North Korean politician as a president, in this case, there's a possibility North Korea will choose a friendly stance to the South Korea. People expect, but when we check the historical fact, indeed, the completely opposite has happened many times. View from the North Korea, yes. Friendly South Korean president is not a friend, because it looks like North Korea underestimate the capability of such kind of soft stance of the South Korea, because North Korea believe the power, North Korea believe the strength, not the soft stance towards other country. So that's why, indeed, there is a cultural gap between the North Korean leader and the soft stance South Korea president. So that has happened many times. So when the South Korea choose a relatively soft president towards the North Korea choose a strong hawkish stance towards the South Korea was the pattern, as a message, at least the message North Korea tried to say, and North Korea said the South Korea is not a variable government, and North Korea is more stronger and will negotiate with the US directly, not to South Korea, something like that has happened.
Yes, Dr. Nagal, as always, such excellent insight. Thank you so much for your time. That is all we have for now, but we will be back shortly with more of the latest breaking news from across the world. Thank you.